This is a supplemental video to help with learning about insulin infusions using Island Health's IV insulin adult inpatient acute clinical order set. When we take a look at the clinical order set, we can see the orders that actually can tell us how to start and mix the insulin. We mix 100 units of regular human insulin in 100 mils of normal saline for a concentration of 1 unit per mil. From reading the IV monograph, we note that the tubing must be flushed because insulin will absorb to the plastic initially, so they suggest that we flush with 20 mils prior to using it with new tubing. If we look at a scenario and an insulin infusion is running at 4 units per hour, we need to figure out the calculation. So really what we're asking is how many mils per hour is 4 units per hour? The question is how many mils is 4 units? In order to calculate this, we need to use concentration equals dosage over volume. We know that 1 unit per mil is equal to 4 units over a volume, and we'll solve for volume. In this case, the volume is 4 mils. If 4 units takes 1 hour to infuse, then 4 mils takes 1 hour also. Therefore, 4 units per hour is 4 mils per hour. Now looking at the rest of the clinical order set, we'll run through a couple of scenarios to familiarize you with this. At 11 o'clock, the previous blood glucose was 5.6 and the current is 9.8. When we look at this and we compare the numbers, we compare 9.8 to 5.6, we notice that this is an increase. We then go along the other scale to find out that we're in our target range and that there is going to be no change in the rate. In this scenario, the rate will stay at 4 units per hour. We will be checking the blood glucose again in 4 hours because the current BBG is 9.8. At 1500 hours, the previous BBGM was 9.8 and the current is 11.8. The insulin infusion was at 4 units per hour. When we compare the numbers again, 11.8 to 9.8, again we see that this is an increase in the glucose because the current value is higher than the previous. We're now in between 10.1 and 12, so we'll notice that the rate is going to have to increase by 0.5 units per hour. In this case, the rate will increase to 4.5 units per hour. Because the current BBGM is 11.8, we also recognize that we're going to have to look at the blood glucose again in 2 hours. At 1700 hours, the previous BBGM, which was 11.8, but now the current one is 5.6. When we compare the numbers, we'll recognize that this is a moderate to large decrease, and that 5.6, when we line it up on the table, it will say to reduce the rate by 50%. So in this scenario, the rate would decrease to 2.25 units per hour. The current BBGM is 5.6, which indicates that we're going to have to recheck the blood glucose again in 2 hours. At 1900 hours, when you take the BBGM, it's 3.9. When we compare the numbers, we realize that this is a small decrease in glucose. But we also realize that blood glucose is less than 4, which means that we need to stop the infusion, treat as per VIHA hypoglycemia protocol, and we'll repeat blood glucose monitoring in 20 minutes. We'll resume the infusion at 50% of the previous rate once the blood glucose is greater than 5 millimoles per liter. So we will stop the infusion, and once the infusion is restarted, the rate will decrease to 1.13 units per hour. We're also rechecking the blood glucose in 20 minutes. It's really important that you read the small print. At the very bottom of the clinical order set, there is a place there that says if the rate needs to be decreased to less than 0.5 units per hour, stop the infusion, followed by other instructions. This only applies to the insulin infusion rate if it's less than 0.5 units per hour. And that's the end of the scenarios. I encourage you to run through other scenarios with your peers, and if you have any questions, bring them forward to your teachers. Thank you.